Everyone, so I'll be giving a demo on how to use Gitlab Duo to reduce the number of unknown licenses in our license DB. And we'll be doing this by identifying licenses that can be alias. So the problem that we face is that the same license string can be represented in many formats. So for example, Apache license 2.0, these are the various licenses that we have seen that occurs in all the packages that we have in the license DB. To do this, we will be using Gitlab Duo to help us identify if a license string matches a known license. We do this by asking it to give us a confidence score, which you will see more in detail later on. The first step is to identify unknown licenses that have a high occurrence rate, and we can use a query like this to do it. Right, so to give a quick explanation of this query, we are looking at the license stat table. We are joining it with the match type table to look for unknown licenses, right? And we are grouping together license string. So this will ensure that the results would only have unique licenses. And most importantly, we are only taking licenses that appears more than 1,000 times. This is an arbitrary number. We can definitely reduce this, but at this point in time, this generates a result that is manageable for us to process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this query. Right, it's going to connect to my dev instance, but we should ideally run this in the production database. It's going to take some time to generate the file. Okay, great. So the file is ready. We're just going to print it out to see how it looks like. Right, as you can see, there's the ID and then a license string. It's a standard CSV file. And so the next step would be to pass this as a prompt to Gitlab Duo. So I'm going to open a new file, right? I'm going to copy over some prompts that I've prepared previously. So the first part of the prompt is the licenses table that we would want Gitlab Duo to match against. As you can see, there's the ID, an identifier, and a full name, right? And the first part is really describing what this data is, right? At the end of it, I'm going to add licenses that we generated just now from the SQL query, right? So this is the explanation of what that license is, right? And I'm just going to open that file again and copy over the licenses here. Right, maybe I should also copy the header of the license. And then the final part of the prompt is to ask Gitlab Duo to help us assign a confidence score to the licenses. So for example, for the Apache license string, you give it an example of 3 Apache licenses, right? Apache 1.0, 1.1, right, and 2.0. Right, I'm going to explain to it that there's no way that we can determine what version of Apache this is, and that's why we'll be scoring it 0. Right, whereas for this example, AGPL3, right, it actually matches precisely to AGPL 3.0, right, with the only difference being that there's a dash, right, and so for this we can give a score of 10. And we're going to ask it to present the results in a CSV file. Note here that I asked it to start from a particular ID, right? This is because Gitlab Duo might not be able to return the full results for all 96 licenses, right? We want a way to ask it to start from a certain point again in the subsequent message. Right, and so now we are going to use Gitlab Duo. I'm going to open it here, right? And what I'm going to do is to copy this whole message and send it over there. Right, and you can see here that it stopped at the ID 48. So what I'm gonna do is just copy this, open it in a new file, right, and just save this as results for now. Right, and then I'm gonna go back to the prompt that we prepared and look for where it stopped, right? Delete the previous entries, update the ID to start at 49. Then I'm just gonna copy this and run again, just so that it can generate the remaining results. And yes, it managed to, so I'm just gonna copy this results too. I'm gonna paste it here, right, and save it. I'm gonna open it with numbers, right, and then I'll be adding a sort. I'll be sorting it against the confidence table. And let's take a look at how well Gitlab Duo was able to match the licenses. Okay, so I'm just gonna hide some columns that we don't really need to look at this point because there's not a lot of screen space. And then I'm gonna move this screen to the left, and then on the right, this is the known licenses table that we saw previously. Right, so let's look at the first license, right? Affero General Public License V3, right? I know that it's here, right? Number 13. And the reason why it didn't match is that GNU is missing, right? But besides that, everything matches nicely. It's a difference in format, right? And this is definitely something that we can add to the alias, right? Same for Apache license version 2.0, right? So there's an additional version word there, whereas in the known license version is missing. If you go through this list, most of the licenses with confidence score of 10 usually can be added to the alias, but we should double check, right? I've also seen that most of the 9s can be added, right? But from the scores with 8 and below, it's a tougher match. So for example, something like this, Apache 2.0 with LLVM exception, this looks like a SPDX expression, and this is currently not supported, so we would not be adding this to the alias, right? Let's look at FreeBSD, for example. Right, so there's BSD2 clause FreeBSD, right, and then there's FreeBSD doc. It's not sure what it should be matched to, right, and I don't think we should add this to the alias. And so this is the gist of what we can use to continually identify licenses that can be added to the alias. What I typically do after this is to add a column, right, decision, right, to then identify the licenses that we want to add, right, and then we can essentially write a script that pulls this raw license string, right, and map it to the matched identifier.